end.
All right, let me bring my screen up for everybody. Okay, thank you, Ashley, and thank you to the Down Syndrome Association of Central Florida for having me. Like she said, my name is Michelle Maddox, and I am coming to you from Fort Mill, South Carolina, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. You might be more familiar. So tonight we're going to talk about navigating the tween and teen years, topics to address with your family member with Down syndrome, and I hope to answer most of your questions. Thank you guys for filling those out on your registration. And if I can't answer them, I hope to guide you towards some resources that might give you more information. Like Ashley said, my private practice is No Limits Counseling and Coaching, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker in North Carolina and South Carolina. And I've been involved with the disability community either as a volunteer or professional in various direct care roles for 20 years. And in 2020, this was kind of my COVID project to establish this private practice, as I saw a need for more therapists that are familiar with and can work with people with intellectual disabilities, specifically teens and adults with Down syndrome. So I specialize in providing counseling to individuals with Down syndrome. I work mainly with ages 16 and older. And on top of that, I also provide relationship coaching, dating, and sexuality workshops to individuals of all IDD diagnoses. So we'll go ahead and get right into it with an overview of puberty and Down syndrome. So I know that someone had asked if puberty starts at the same time for individuals with Down syndrome compared to their peers without Down syndrome. So I do not have a medical background, but I did try to do a little bit of research on that for you. And most of the reports that I looked at said that puberty does start around the same time as their peers without Down syndrome. And most of the time, it's the physical changes that start around the same time. However, the social emotional maturity that comes along with puberty may be delayed, as you can imagine, probably due to the intellectual disability. And it was noted in one of the studies that I looked at that thyroid problems that are commonly seen in people with Down syndrome, that sometimes that can impact the timing of puberty. So they said if you are seeing signs of puberty before the age of 8 or nothing has started by the age of 14, that would be a time that you probably want to get in touch with your doctor and discuss that. So as I go through the slides, I'm going to kind of pause and show you some references and resources as we go along. So the first one I wanted to bring up, which most of you are probably aware of, is the National Down Syndrome Society website. So if you go on here, their resource page, you can print these articles for free. And as you can tell, it's a variety of topics. So these are more informational for parents, caregivers, medical professionals. So there's some healthcare guidelines, mental health, nutrition. This is a good one for primary care providers. If you see a doctor that you feel like maybe isn't as familiar with or doesn't see as many clients with Down syndrome, this is something you could print out and bring to an appointment with you. So again, if you have any more specific like medical questions, I know someone had asked about birth control, which I'm not well versed on for this population. You'll probably be able to find that in this women's health guide. Okay, so again, that's the National Down Syndrome Society resource page. All right. So, a big part of the tween, teen, puberty years is increased need for independence or desire for independence. So, at this time, you may or may not see an increase in negative behaviors due to your family members' desire for more independence. So maybe they're getting more frustrated that they can't do things themselves, or they're wanting to try to do more things themselves. And just so you know, like I said, I typically work with older teens and adults. And this is a behavior and a desire that is even still occurring as they reach adulthood. They may start to get frustrated, or maybe you feel like they're being more oppositional. And at times it can be because they're wanting to be more independent. Maybe they're seeing their siblings becoming more independent and they want to be like that. So just something to keep in the back of your mind, that maybe they're acting this way because they want independence. So, a few things that you could do throughout the day to maybe help fill that need: provide opportunities for choices throughout the day. Just simple things that you can keep in a structured setting or environment, whether it's, do you want to wear this shirt or this shirt today? Do you want to have this for breakfast or this for breakfast? So keeping the choices just a couple things at a time, but allowing them to pick so that they feel like that they are making the choice, they're making the decision, they have some control over things that are happening in their life. Another thing to think about is allowing them to use their groove to complete daily living tasks. So, if you have not heard of the term the groove, that is referring to that most people with Down syndrome have a preference for sameness. And Dr. Chicoine and Drs. McGuire at the Adult Down Syndrome Center kind of came up with this term, the groove, because it is such a common behavior in people with Down syndrome. So if your family member likes to do the same thing in the same order every morning when they wake up, or they have a certain nighttime routine, or maybe they have to take a shower at a certain time every day, or people need to sit in the same chairs at dinner, or they just like to have things in an exact place in their room. A lot of times families will tell me that their teen with Down syndrome has the cleanest room in the house, or the most organized. I'm not saying it's like that for everybody, but I do hear that a lot. So the groove is actually a really good thing for people with Down syndrome for most of the time. And it can help promote independent living, because if they get into that routine of doing the same things in a certain way every day, then they're able to complete those tasks independently. Also, to promote independence, you want to try to assist your family member in developing self-advocacy skills. So that could be something as simple as having conversations with them about things that they like and things that they don't like, things that they're afraid of, things that make them happy, so that they can really get to know themselves, and then they'll be able to express themselves to other people. But sometimes we really have to ask them those questions and allow them an opportunity to think about it. Well, what do I like to do for fun? Or what does scare me? Or what things do I not want to do with my friends? So just having these conversations, whether it's at the dinner table, just something casual to get them thinking about things in their life that they like and don't like. And then doing role plays. What if something's happening to you that you don't like? How would you speak up for yourself? Or how would you say no? And role plays are a good way to practice these situations in a safe setting. A lot of you also asked about managing emotions during this time, and I will say this is a lifelong process. People with Down syndrome are lifelong learners, just like the rest of us. So it's never too early or too late to start practicing some of these things. Obviously, as a mental health therapist, this is what I tend to focus on the most with my clients. And so, the first part when we're thinking about managing emotions is to help your family member develop their emotional literacy skills. So, what that means is just helping them develop the vocabulary. So, a lot of times I might have a client that tells me, I'm fine, or I'm okay, or it's all right. So then I might ask them, well, are you okay calm? Are you okay happy? Trying to get them to actually use feelings words. And I do that whether I'm using, I know some of these look kind of small, but like a poster that has different emotions or feelings faces on it. People with Down syndrome are very visual learners, so just giving them that visual aid so they can see what someone looks like when they're feeling a certain way. Or at the bottom of the screen, I have the emotions wheel. So if they want to go through and talk about different feelings, maybe there's feelings words on there that they don't really know what they mean. Or we might talk about, okay, well, tell me about a time when you felt proud of yourself. Or tell me about the last time you got mad. How did you calm down and make yourself feel better? So just having conversations to give them practice in using these words that they don't really come naturally. And some other ways you can do that would be like playing mainstream games. For example, Uno is a popular one that I'll use. So you could play Uno as a family, and then you just assign the different cards, the different colors, different emotions. For example, when you discard red, okay, tell me about a time that you felt angry. Or tell me about how you helped a friend that was angry. Or if you put down the blue card, tell me about a time you were sad. How did you make yourself feel better? Yellow, share about a time that you felt happy. So again, there's no right or wrong way to do it, and you can assign whatever emotions you want. You could do it the same thing if you're playing a game like Candyland, where there's different colors on the game board, and each time you land on a different color, you assign that a different emotion and talk about it. So the best thing to do is, like I said, make it a game or try to fit it into conversations through your day. I know some families might do, what do they call it? Like rose and thorn at night. So tell me about the rose, the happiest part of your day, and the thorn, the saddest part of your day. So just having conversations like that to give them practice of actually thinking about, wait, how do I feel? Because it's not something that we really stop and think about that much. Um, and then again, visual learners, observations and TV shows. So, like we said earlier, maybe your family member has a preference for sameness, whether they like to watch the same show every day, over and over. So, maybe you can use that show in a different way and maybe watch it with them, point out people's faces and say, oh, how do you think that person feels right now? Or they look really upset. What advice would you give them to calm down? So use a lot of visuals, whether it's visual aids, videos. It could be interactions in public. If you're at the park, like, oh, that kid over there looks angry. How can they calm down? And so that's what I usually get into next are calm down activities. A lot of the adults I work with, maybe growing up in school, they were told to go to a calm down space or a quiet area until they felt better, and then they could come back to the group, but they weren't necessarily taught how to calm down once they got to this space. So again, it's never too early or too late to practice these things. But obviously, a big part of managing emotions is how to calm down or how to control them or how to handle the emotions appropriately. So, some things, basic calm down activities that we may work on are deep breathing, muscle relaxation, grounding, and tapping. So there's a couple visual aids to the side just to give you some examples of some things that I use in my practice. Um, For example, deep breathing. It sounds very simple, but maybe they don't know the right way to do it that actually calms the body. So this visual aid tells them to breathe in through their nose like they're smelling a flower, or pick something that they think smells really good so that they take a deep breath through their nose, and then tell them to blow out through their mouth like they're blowing out candles on their birthday cake. So this way they have something visual and then they can practice it over and over. Um, Muscle relaxation. This really teaches about how our body feels when we are stressed. So a lot of times, obviously, our body gives us signals when we're feeling a certain way, but the individual with Down syndrome may not recognize that. So I'll do a lot of, give yourself a big hug and squeeze as tight as you can. That is what tense, or that is what stress feels like in your body. Now, relax your arms and make them feel like jello or spaghetti noodles, and say, that is what relaxation feels like. Can you feel the difference? So that they can start to recognize, oh, I'm tensing up, I'm getting worked up. This is when I need to try to relax. Um, Grounding is another exercise that I like to use. That's the picture at the bottom that has the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this brings in the senses, and this is good to use with individuals that have anxiety, or maybe they're worried about something that happened yesterday, or they can't stop talking about it, or they're worried about something that's coming up. And so this helps them focus on the present and what is happening currently in their environment. So you start with number 5, and you would just ask them, list 5 things you can see right now. So they just sit and look around the room. It could be a light, a curtain, a book, whatever they can see. And then list 4 things you can feel. You can reach out and touch something. You can feel yourself, excuse me, sitting in the chair. You can feel your feet on the floor. Three things you can hear. So then you just be quiet. Can you hear the air conditioning blowing? Can you hear a bird or a car outside? So you just go through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and get them to focus on what is happening now. And it might help them kind of snap out of something that they're stuck on, that they keep talking about might happen tomorrow, or something happened yesterday. All right. Another simple activity that you can do is something called tapping. And that's the butterfly hug visual that's on the side of the screen. So this is just crossing your hands over your chest, and it's like a nervous system relaxation. And you just alternate the taps, and it can soothe your body. Again, something simple that they can do. Deep breathing, muscle relaxation, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and tapping. So a lot of times I'll tell families to find visual aids, which I'll show you where to find those in a minute, and just kind of put together a folder or a binder of calm down activities that your family member could eventually learn to reference when they're upset. Like, oh, I need to go get my folder to help me calm down. A lot of times, if they're frustrated, they don't want to hear a lot of talking either. So if you could just say, here's your binder, and they've learned to go through it and look at the pictures to calm down a little bit, it might minimize them getting more worked up. So just a few suggestions for calm down activities. I do a lot of positive thinking or reframing negative thoughts or gratitude practice with my clients. As we all know, it is a myth that people with Down syndrome are always happy. So if your family member tends to go towards the negative, this is a good thing. Like, okay, you said today's going to be a bad day. What can we say instead? And trying to give them an inner voice or a different script for them to repeat more positive things inside their head. And then, of course, just healthy living, whether it's exercise, getting outside, listening to music. I'll talk to my clients about, just being active, even if they don't like to work out. Most of my clients like to dance. So I'll tell them, all right, just put your favorite song on and dance around your room for 2 or 3 minutes. That's something that is healthy for you. So I will show you how easy it is to find some calm down videos on YouTube. If you just search, typically I'll look up like calm down videos for teens or calm down videos for kids. And those are the ones that are most appropriate for my clients, but I'll just scan through for a minute. And they're just typically like 2, 3, 4, 5 minute videos. You could put together a whole playlist if they have their own iPad and save a bunch of videos so that they can access them on their own. So just to scroll through here and show you different things that they could do. Now, when I'm teaching calm down activities, I'll usually tell them to practice these things at bedtime because you don't want to wait for them to get upset and be like, oh yeah, let's try these new calm down videos that I just found. You want them to practice when they're calm so that maybe when they do get upset, they'll remember, okay, these videos are supposed to help me. Let me try. So often I'll tell them, we need to calm down before bedtime. So that would be a good time to either practice the deep breathing or do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or watch one of the calm down videos. So again, if you just search, like I did, calm down video for teens or kids, you can usually find short, age appropriate things for your family member to watch. Okay. And the last part of managing emotions, again, like I said, I do role plays a lot or providing scripts, like how to express themselves with different fill in the blank things. So a lot of times if we're talking about difficult emotions, whether it's angry, sad, frustrated, annoyed, I'll use this visual aid. It's from the Adult Down Syndrome Center resource page, which I'll show you in a minute. For I statements, because this takes the blame away from other people, or it makes it sound like we're not attacking other people when we're angry. So we would go through and say, I feel angry when you call me names because that hurts my feelings. Please call me by my name. So if someone's bothering them at school, we might go through this script several times and let them practice filling in the blanks and coming up with ways that they can express themselves. Also, apologizing is big in working with my clients and teaching them how to make the apology sound like they really mean it. And so sometimes we will go through this script again and practice. I'm sorry for calling you names. It was wrong because it was hurting your feelings. Next time I will call you by your name. Will you forgive me? So again, a lot of like trying to role play real life situations before they're put in the situation. Okay, moving on from emotions, and those of you that were curious about navigating relationships during this time, we'll talk a little bit about friendships and crushes. Um, so the best place to start is with a basic understanding of boundaries. So this is the Circles curriculum. I did not make this. It's a curriculum that I purchased, and I do a lot of groups using this. But you can make your own circles map, or even if you just search circles boundaries or circles relationship, you can find different versions that are made on like Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest or something. Um, this is typically like an 8-week program, so I'll just try to summarize how you could use it real quickly. But the premise of it is the purple private circle That's where you belong. Only you are in your purple private circle. And then everybody else in your world is in all these different colors. So this is a good visual because it can show them where different people in their life belong based on how well they know them. And it can help with, okay, since you know these people well, you're allowed to hug these people. You're allowed to tell these people I love you or talk to them about private things. So the people in the blue big hug circle, the circle that's closest to purple, those are people that you love, like your family, your boyfriend or girlfriend, your best friend. Those are people you can talk to about private things. Um, those are people that you can really trust. And then the next green circle is where we put our friends. Those are people we can talk to about fun things. We can give them side hugs. And then if we go out to yellow, that would be where our teachers belong. And we don't hug our teachers, but it's okay to give them a handshake or a fist bump. And we don't really talk to them about personal things, but we talk to them about school. So this just shows a visual, and you can kind of use the map, if you're going on an outing. Like, okay, we're going to the grocery store. People that we walk past in the grocery store don't belong in our blue or green circle. So that means we're not going to hug anybody that we randomly see at the grocery store. Again, just trying to give some visual separation between how to act, how to touch, and what things you can talk about. So this is what I'll use a lot of times in teaching boundaries. And then I teach a lot about healthy relationships, and I'll usually start teaching them about self-respect and self-esteem. And I tell my clients that you can't have happy, healthy relationships with other people until you're happy with yourself and that you like yourself. So we'll do a lot of self-esteem building, like tell me some things that you like about yourself. Tell me some things that you're good at. Why would somebody want to be your friend? Tell me some nice things that you do for other people to really kind of build them up and make them think good things about themselves. And then just identifying what healthy and unhealthy behaviors are. Sometimes, unfortunately, I've had clients that have been friends with just anybody because they just wanted to have a friend so bad. And they might not even recognize that that friend is ugly to them or teasing them or not being nice. So we'll go through different checklists, like if your friend lies to you, is that healthy or unhealthy? If your friend makes you laugh, is that healthy or unhealthy? So just giving them a list of healthy and unhealthy behaviors and seeing if they're able to tell the difference. Again, TV shows and movies. Are those friends being nice to each other, or is that friend being mean? Is that a good friend or is that a bad friend? And then understanding how relationships develop can be very difficult to understand. A lot of clients will say, well, I just met them today and they're my best friend. Or I met this girl and she's beautiful. Now she's my girlfriend. And so, well, I obviously actually use the circles a lot to show them that there's a lot of stages that usually somebody starts out as a stranger. They're in the red circle. Then somebody introduces us, so they move to our yellow acquaintance circle. Then we hang out with them as friends and find out that we have things in common. And then I might decide I want to be more than friends with them, either a best friend or girlfriend or boyfriend, to kind of show that there's actually a lot of steps and it takes a lot of time to get from just meeting someone to a best friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend. Let's see. I think I might have touched mostly on this. Characteristics of a good friend. Appropriate discussion topic. So even if they do have a good friend, a lot of families will tell me, Well, they text or they talk on the phone or they FaceTime and they say the same thing every night or they don't have anything to talk about. So I'll even tell families, well, help them come up with a list of topics like, tell me about Special Olympics this past weekend, or what good movies have you seen lately? Do you have any vacations planned for the summer? So maybe give them a few prompts or write it on a note card, or this is what you guys could talk about tonight. Maybe they need help coming up with ideas. And then sometimes, especially my younger teens, maybe will get in trouble at school because they're trying to get someone's attention or they want to be friends with someone. So they've touched them in an appropriate way or they're just being silly. So practicing, how to appropriately introduce yourself to someone, again, role play, or how to initiate a conversation and giving them those words of how to do that. So they're not going up to someone at school and just keep poking them, knowing that they're just trying to get to know them or introduce themselves. So again, practice at home and try to give them those words on how to do that. And romantic relationships. So this one is always the most fun to teach working with my clients. I started off doing the circles lessons, and then every time we would get to the blue big hug circle and talk about sweethearts, everyone loved that week. So that's when I started doing the dating workshops. So most of my clients say they want to be in a romantic relationship. And so I'll start just talking about having a crush and what does your body feel like when you have a crush on someone? Maybe your face gets hot or you start sweating, or maybe you feel like your heart starts beating faster when you see someone. Um, Maybe this person was just your friend, but now you're finding that you think about them all the time, or you're wondering what they're doing and if you're going to see them tomorrow, and just giving them those examples of those are some signs that you might have a crush on someone, or you might want to be more than friends with someone. And then we'll talk about flirting and what's appropriate. So I always tell them the rule that you don't touch someone to flirt with them. You can give them compliments, you can smile, you can tell them you're happy to see them, make eye contact. Um, there is, it's called the PEERS program, capital PEERS. And it was made out of UCLA. And if you search that on YouTube, they have a lot of like 1 to 2 minute role play videos that you can watch. And there's a whole section, a whole list of dating related and flirting videos. Excuse me. So it might show um, how to flirt with your eyes, and it will have a good way and a bad way. So the first video shows this guy and he's just staring at this girl and she's visibly uncomfortable. So then we'll pause it and say, what was he doing wrong? How do you think she felt? That made her uncomfortable, didn't it? And then we'll watch the good video and it'll show how they're both on their phones. He glances up and smiles and then goes back to what he's doing. And we'll talk about, what did you notice that he did differently? She didn't seem uncomfortable. She liked that, right? So again, visuals, visuals, visuals as much as you can. And then after teaching boundaries with the circles, we also have to teach respecting other people's boundaries. And I'll tell them, just because you want to hug someone doesn't mean they want to hug you. And even if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe today they wanted to hug you, but tomorrow they don't. It doesn't mean they don't like you anymore. That's just their boundary and you have to respect it. So we'll talk about mutual consent, and I'll tell them mutual means both. Consent means saying yes. So that means both people have to say yes before you hug. So you always have to ask, can I give you a hug? And if that person says yes, it's okay. If that person says no, then you have to respect that and not hug that person. And then, of course, talking to them about rejection, that just because they have a crush on someone doesn't always mean that that person is going to feel the same way or want to be their boyfriend or girlfriend. And that's okay. And we'll talk about handling rejection. So if you get mad at that person because they said no, well, then you might not even be friends with them. So it's important, even if they say no, just to respectfully say, okay, and I hope we can still be friends. Or if somebody tells you no, don't keep going back tomorrow and the next day and the next day and asking, hoping that they're going to change their mind. And we talk about, how might it make that person feel? They might start to feel uncomfortable or scared or nervous when they see you coming around. So you just want to make sure that you're still friendly to somebody, even if they don't want to be your boyfriend or girlfriend. And there's obviously a lot that can go on with relationships like this. That could be a whole nother session, but just to give you a few starting points. All right, private versus public. Some of you had asked about this as well. And it is important to note that some people with disabilities may be desensitized to privacy due to caregiving that they've had throughout their life. Um, depending on their level of care, if someone has always had to help them in the bathroom or help them dress or with hygiene, they might not be aware that their body is something that should be kept private because they've always been with other people in doing personal and private things. So it is something that most often does have to be taught. It doesn't come naturally. So you want to identify what are their private parts. And the private parts are usually the parts of your body that are covered by a bathing suit. And then teach things like modesty, whether it's, oh, I bought you this special robe. So when you get out of the shower, you put your robe on and then you walk to your room. You have to identify what topics are private, what behaviors are private, and what places are private. So, talking to them about, okay, things that are private to talk about would be your private parts. Anything that you would talk to a doctor about would be private. Private behaviors are anything that you would do touching your private parts, and private places. Where can you go if you want alone time? And a lot of times we have to identify, sorry, I've had a cold, I'm so sorry. A lot of times we have to identify, hey, the whole house is actually not private place. So where in the house can we go if we want alone time? Your bedroom or the bathroom, and just letting them know again, where can they go? And then you want them to know, who do they talk to about private things? And that's when I'll use the circles. So the people that are close to you in your blue circle are appropriate people for you to talk to. But you might need to come up with a list. When you're at home, if you have personal or private questions, you can talk to mom or dad. If you're at school and you need help with something personal or private, you might be able to talk to your teacher, or maybe you need to go to the nurse and talk to the nurse about it, and they can call mom or dad. Um, and then even identifying when and where these conversations are appropriate. So if one of your females starts her period, she knows that it's okay to talk to mom about it, but not in the grocery store while we're walking down the aisle to buy pads. Say, okay, I know you have questions about this, but we're going to wait and talk about it in the car, or we'll wait and talk about it when we get back home. So a lot of times it does have to be very clear who, what, when, and where. And this is a visual. There are a lot of social stories on the Adult Down Syndrome Center resource page. And earlier when I was trying to access it, it wasn't opening. So let me see if it'll work. Okay, well, just so you know what it looks like, so you're finding the right thing. This is one of my favorite websites, and I hate that it is not working. It wouldn't load earlier. But anyway, if you go to this page, it has all the visual aids you could possibly need. It has social stories about puberty, about using tampons, about shaving, about calm down activities, anything and everything. And I hate that I can't show it to you because I use this all the time. So for any printables that you need, this is where I would start. The Adult Down Syndrome Center Resource Library. Um, and again, print out anything that you think is relevant to your family member. Keep it all in a binder that they can use as a reference. And the social story that's on the screen is just an example of one of the ones I actually got off of their website. And this chart is on their website as well. So talking about hygiene, it is good to establish a routine like we talked about earlier, the groove and getting them into doing the same thing in the same order every day. That can promote independence. So if they know that they got to wake up, wash their face, put on deodorant, and brush their hair in that order every day, it'll help them kind of pick it up and start doing it on their own. Most of the time, when we talk about hygiene, you're probably going to have to demonstrate the behavior first, how to do it appropriately. Use verbal prompts and visual aids like this chart that they have, um, or make a schedule or some kind of checklist. Now, I use visual aids even with the adults. I don't think that there's any time that you can really age out of using these things. So I highly recommend visuals for everything. Body changes in puberty. This is probably one of the things that parents have the least confidence in talking about. So this is another example of a social story that is on the Adult Down Syndrome Center page. Body changes for a boy. And so that's another thing they have. They'll have like body changes for a girl, body changes for a boy, privacy for girls, privacy for boys. So this will be a good starting point to talk about these changes and go through it as a social story. Um, Obviously, we all know what puberty is and what happens because we've been through it. The hardest part typically is just talking about it. So that's why I wanted to give you just some resources to help facilitate those conversations. So the first place, like I said, would be the Adult Down Syndrome Center visual aids. And I'll show you a website in a second with some videos, but you would just talk to them and give them concrete, simple terms. You know, puberty is your body is changing from a child to a man or a child to a woman. Talk to them about that they're going to get hair in different places and, you know, about breast development or their penis or testicles are going to grow. You just want to make sure that they're aware of these things so they don't think something is wrong with them or weird if they notice that something is happening. Obviously, during this time, erections are a new thing for boys and periods are a new thing for girls. Again, just having the conversation and letting them know what's going to happen and what it is will take a little bit of the fear and worry out so they don't think something is wrong when that happens. And I think a lot of times, you know, parents hear, oh, I have to have the talk. Well, it doesn't have to be the talk, a big like sit down, I have to teach everything at one time. You know, it might just be something came up in conversation. Okay, this would be a good time to talk about it. Or my daughter came home and said her friend started her period. What is that? So you can just pick like little times to talk about this stuff. It doesn't have to be like a whole sex ed conversation all at one time. And then also changes that they can't see. Explain to them that hormones are chemicals in their body that might make them feel happy one minute and really mad the next. And there's nothing wrong with them, that will balance out, but these are just some changes that are going on in their body. Or this is when hormones are making them feel like their friend that used to just be a friend, they might want them as a boyfriend or girlfriend, that it changes their thoughts and makes them think about things in a different way. So just explaining again in simple terms, using visual aids, and I'll show you some other resources. So this website, the next one, is called amaze.org. And it has, as you can see, topics about everything here. This is the puberty section, but there's animated videos. And even though some of the videos might seem kind of silly, it's obviously mature topics. So I always recommend that you watch the video first before you share it with your family member. But just to scroll down and give you an idea of all the things that you can find on here. And again, these are just like short 3 or 4 minute videos. The good thing about this website is you can go to the parent section, and after watching these videos, it will give you talking points. So if you can't think of what to say or how to elaborate or how to answer questions, it gives you information on kind of how to talk about what you just watched with your family member. And again, if your family member asks you something and you don't know, or you're not ready to talk about it, it's okay to say, I'm not sure, let me think about that, or let me get some more information before we talk about it. You don't have to talk about it if you aren't comfortable or feel equipped to do so. So again, just scrolling through some of the videos, it talks about feelings, all kinds of things. And that is amaze.org. All right. And lastly, sex education. So, depending on the source, individuals with intellectual disabilities are 4 to 7 times more likely to experience sexual abuse in their life. This is why I say that it's very important for them to have sex education. Now, some families tell me, well, I want my family member with Down syndrome to experience everything in an intimate relationship that we would. And other parents tell me there's no way that's ever going to happen. So, and there's no right or wrong way. You know what your family member, you know your family member better than anyone. But I would say whether they are going to have an intimate relationship in their life or not, it's still important that they know what these things are. So if something ever did happen to them, they need to know that it's inappropriate or that was intimate or private and they didn't agree to that. So I will often start just talking about body rights. Your body belongs to you. Nobody touches you unless you give them permission. And then setting a safety plan. If somebody tries to do something, what should you do? I would say no. Well, then we practice, well, how do you say no? And change our different tone of voice. Like, do I say no, thank you? Or do I say no, get away? And again, role plays. How do you tell somebody no? A lot of times, my clients with Down syndrome are people pleasers and they feel bad saying no to people because they think that it's rude or they might hurt their feelings. So just practicing saying no is a big thing for them. And again, with the safety plan, say no, get away, and tell someone. So coming up with a list. Who are your trusted people? Who would you tell if something happened to you? Then teaching about consent, knowing how to say no, like I just mentioned, They need to know the correct or medical scientific names of their private parts. I was attending a training one time, and the sexuality educator was talking about a story where a girl had gone to school and was telling her teacher or principal or something that somebody was messing with her pocketbook. Well, they're like, leave your pocketbook in your locker. So she went back multiple times. They're touching my pocketbook. Well, nobody knew what she was talking about. And then come to find out, she referred to her private area as her pocketbook because that was like a cute name that her family had given to her private area when she was little. But when she was going to report that something was happening, nobody knew what she was talking about. So it's really important when we are talking about private parts that we call them a penis, a vagina, breast, and use the right term so that there's no confusion. They also need to know about different sexual acts. So they might know that intercourse is private, but do they know that if somebody shows them their private parts, do they know that that's inappropriate and that they need to tell someone? Do they know about sexting? If somebody sends you a picture of their private parts or any kind of picture that makes you uncomfortable, you need to tell someone. So they just need to know about these things to know when they should tell somebody or to know that it's inappropriate. And then I work with a lot of couples who've been in relationships for 5, 6, 7 years. They want to live together, they want to get married. And so we will talk about safe sex practices. Um, a lot of times their families have talked to them for years about birth control, and they'll decide together what they want to do. Um, and reproduction. So just giving them the information. Knowledge is key, just so they know about those things. I know parents have concerns. Well, if I teach them about this, then they're definitely going to want to do it. And that's not the case. Again, it's just for education, just so they know what is happening or hopefully not happening and how to stop it if something like that ever happens. And as far as sex ed videos, one more resource for you guys. Okay, so on YouTube, if you search the National Council on Independent Living, they have a series of sex ed videos, again, just like 2 or 3 minutes long, and it's made by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. It has a variety of topics, like this one is another one, sex, gender, and genitals. There's one on how to use a condom. There's one on safe sex practices, reproduction. This is just a little intro to the course, so I'll just give you an example of what the videos are like.
Sex ed for people with IDD. Welcome. Why do we have to make a video about sex ed for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
When the other kids had sex education, I had to go somewhere else.
Other kids got to learn about birth control and condoms and how to be parents, and all anyone ever told me was don't have sex. My parents had a big discussion about sex with my sister who doesn't have a disability. But when I was growing up, nobody said anything to me. There are a lot of myths of sexuality and people with disabilities. Some people feel people with disabilities aren't sexual and that we don't need sex education at all.
But that's not true.
People also say people with disabilities are too sexual or hypersexual. If they start talking to us about sex, we're just gonna go right out and start having sex all over the place. That's not true either. Other folks think people with IDD don't have the same variety of sexual and gender identity. We do, and we shouldn't ignore that.
These myths is how people with disabilities are portrayed in the media.
So welcome to our sex ed video for and by people with IDD. It has different parts. You can skip around. You can watch from beginning to end. It's up to you. Produced by the National Council on Independent Living and Rooted in Rights. Was
Okay, so again, you can just search on YouTube, National Council on Independent Living, and look up sex ed for IDD. And as I suggested before with any of the videos, I always recommend watching them first yourself and just to make sure that you feel comfortable with your family member seeing that, and that you know what you want to talk about after viewing it. All right. So the resources that I talked about today, again, visual aids from the Adult Down Syndrome Center Resource Library, the videos on amaze.org, the National Council on Independent Living Sex Ed videos are on YouTube. And then there's several books by Terry Cowenhoven. She has an adult daughter with Down syndrome, and she's a sexuality educator. The Girl's Guide to Growing Up. It's written on, I think, like a third grade level. So this is something that potentially your family member could read on their own, or you guys can read together, or you read first and then she reads it and you talk about it. But it goes through puberty basics, what changes you will see, talks about periods, caring for your body, and it has a lot of visuals, visual steps on how to change a pad and all kinds of things like that. And then she also has the guys version, the Boys Guide to Growing Up. And again, it's written on more like a third grade level, so that you can read it together or they can read it independently, whatever you think is best for your family member. And then this one is more of a reference guide teaching children with Down syndrome about their bodies, boundaries, and sexuality. That's the picture in the middle up there. This is also by Terry Cowenhoven. I'm pretty sure I spelled her name right on there. If you just look her name up on Amazon, typically her books will pop up. That is everything I have for you today. I always like to end all of my presentations with the 1% better every day philosophy, because I feel like I throw so much information at you and I don't want to overwhelm. So I'm sure most of you have heard of Chris Nikic, the first man with Down syndrome to finish an Ironman race. And he has done some motivational talks about his 1% better everyday philosophy. And he says that when he first started training for this, he could only do one push-up and one sit-up. And so he didn't try to do 25 the next day. The next day he did 2 push-ups and 2 sit-ups. So that is what I like for you to think about with all the information that I just gave you. Don't feel like you have to start talking about emotions at every family dinner and pointing out things in every video you watch and schedule different sex ed talks throughout the week. Just try to come up with little tweaks or little changes that you can make in your loved one's routine and introduce them to things gradually. So again, I hope I haven't overwhelmed and that the resources were helpful. This is my contact information. We do have time for questions, but if you don't want to ask something, you can always email me at Michelle with 1L, nolimitscounseling.org. My website is nolimitscounseling.org, and you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. Again, I'm happy to answer questions for anybody that reaches out. And that is it.
Thank you, Michelle. We're going to open up for questions in the Q&A feature. If anyone has any questions, go ahead and drop them in there.
Okay.
A lot of thank yous so far, Michelle.
Okay, good, good. Yes, and feel free to reach out about any resources if you want me to share. All right, any more questions?
I don't think so. Oh,
Yeah. Well, hopefully that means I shared everything that you guys wanted to hear.
one question.
Okay.
So they're asking if you can talk about masturbation and healthy ways to redirect the kids from doing that in public and encourage it to be done in private spaces.
So again, using visual aids to identify where those private spaces are. A lot of times families will tell me, well, we've had the conversation, and when we're talking about it, it seems to make sense and they get it, but then the next week they just go and do it again. So it could be like putting a sign up in their room saying, this is a private space. This is my space for alone time. It just triggers a different part of the brain, even though you're having the conversations, to have some kind of visual. Let's see what else. And sometimes I think it just takes repetition, you know, saying the same things over and over. How to redirect if they're doing it in public places. I'm gonna have to think about that one if you want to email me.
Okay. Any additional questions? No, I think that's it, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time and for answering the questions that we did get.
Sure. Thank you guys so much for attending. I appreciate it, even though I couldn't see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.